Discover your favorite experts on Wikisana now. Welcome, dear viewers, to our format Naturopathy. Today, I'm once again looking forward to Dr. Thomas Rau from the BioMed Center Sonnenberg in Schwellbrunn. And he has brought an exciting guest, Marie-Louise Hartmann. And they will tell us an impressive story that has already deeply touched me in advance. And I believe it's worth it. Stay tuned. Hello, dear Marie-Louise.
Hello, greetings.
Hello, dear Thomas. It's great you are both with us today. And above all, Marie-Louise, I find it very brave and remarkable to share it truly in front of the camera, because it's a very personal story. But, as I've said in other shows, when people talk about their illnesses, their journey, I believe it is something very helpful and comforting and simply shows, for people who might be in similar situations, new solutions.
Yes.
Nice, you're here.
Thank you.
Yes, maybe you can let's just start with your story. Or would you like to say a few words first, Thomas?
Yes, Mrs. Hartmann is a patient who came to me many years ago. She will then report why, and why I actually want to show her. Because it's not just a successful case, but with her, I can also explain what we actually do with tumor patients, with cancer patients, and why our additional therapy is so extremely important.
Wonderful. Yes, then I'll give you the floor.
Yes, 13 years ago, when I was 21 years old, a occult malignant melanoma was diagnosed in me. That is a type of skin cancer. But with this type of cancer, the primary tumor was never found. So there were always metastases appearing in the groin, and no one knew where these metastases came from. I initially ended up in conventional medicine, and the metastases were surgically removed. And then I ended up in a research center because my case was very extraordinary. Additionally, black skin cancer is among the most feared types of cancer and is also occult. This means you can't cut anything out, and so I was told there are now two options. Either I leave things as they are, and the chances of survival are just very, very, very bad. Or if I'm lucky, I can participate in an antibody study. We did that then because as a family, we didn't know at the time that there were other options. So I took part in this study, and it was clear right after the first shot that I had received the medication because I felt really, really terrible afterwards. Then there was a big question mark. What do you do with me as a young woman? The conventional doctors really didn't know what to do with me anymore. It was just an attempt. And then luckily, an acquaintance of ours who was a former patient of Dr. Rau, also a cancer patient whom Dr. Rau healed, pointed out to me that there is this biological medicine and this clinic in Switzerland by Dr. Rau. Then we called there, and the consultation was actually packed. But Dr. Rau already heard on the phone that it was something urgent. So I was really able to come just a week later. And from that point, when we set foot in their clinic, my whole life actually changed. So I really have to say, for us, a completely new world opened up. Just seeing that the waiting room was full of patients from all over the world, seeing that there were seriously ill people, but also seeing that there were patients who actually looked really healthy. And then
die eigentlich richtig gut ausgesehen haben,
With the patients, you then got into conversation and they said, yes, they've been there for years, and they were simply also cured through biological medicine. That really gave us a lot of courage right away. It actually starts with the fact that the atmosphere is quite different when you enter the premises of Dr. Rao compared to when you go into a hospital. Then we were in Dr. Rao's room, and Dr. Rao asked me questions that you don't encounter at all in conventional medicine. That's how it started, with Dr. Rao saying, we can do this. Then it was clear for us as a family, we are going to participate in the whole program. That was the key to success for me. It went in such a way that I started the treatment with Dr. Rao with detoxification, boosting the immune system. Dr. Rao has several pillars that are strengthened. But then I also continued to participate in this conventional medical therapy.
So in the study?
In this study. But I had to sign that I would only participate in this study and that I wouldn't do anything else. Of course, I didn't tell the conventional medicine that I was also participating in biological medicine. So for a while I was doing both, but quickly realized that this study was harming me more than it was actually healing me. Then I quit the conventional treatment, left the study, and focused solely on biological medicine. After 3 months, even though I was already in the 4th stage, I was tumor-free for the first time. That was certainly an achievement.
It's also brave of you to opt out of that study. Many don't have the courage, even if they feel that something isn't doing them any good, to quit. I find that quite remarkable. But now, of course, I have many questions for you, Thomas, just really to show this is such a touching and impressive story. May I also mention what you said before the show, the other study participants, how things went with them?
I can say that myself. I then got in touch with this research center again because I just wanted to know on my own what actually happened with this antibody study. The doctor then told me that the others from my patient group, we were between 10 and 15, that everyone has died. I wouldn't have needed confirmation that biological medicine is healing, but it strengthened me again that it was definitely the right path.
Such an impressive story. Thomas, maybe for understanding, because I think biological medicine and conventional medicine have very contrary or quite contrary views on what a cancer event actually is and how it should be treated.
A person gets cancer when in the metabolism, in the immune system, or also in cancer-causing substances that are in the body. Something is wrong. Then he has this cancer, and actions are taken against it. This was around 13 or 14 years ago. I am very well versed in oncology. That was the early era of antibody therapy for malignant melanoma. And that these initial antibody treatments were not yet so perfect, one must understand that. Nevertheless, it is important to conduct studies. Also, then it is said, you must not do anything else, which of course is nonsensical for the individual. I find that ethically indefensible. But in the meantime, antibody treatments for melanoma have been significantly improved. That is a cancer where there are quite good possibilities. But, and now comes my actual answer, from day one onward, When you know you have cancer, no matter what you do, you must strengthen the body. You must address the causes of why cancer occurs in the first place. The toxic causes, the carcinogenic influences, many influences that can cause skin cancer, not just the sun and such, but many others too. And you have to search for them, remove them, and at the same time, enhance the healthy aspects of a person. That's what's important. The person is still there. You're not only working against cancer, but for the person. And that's why I'm not against chemotherapies, and certainly not against the newfangled antibody therapies, even for lung cancer. They are very good, but their effect diminishes after a few months. That's still the case today. And you have to use that time to build up the immune system, the entire metabolism. Why did they all die? First, those early antibody therapies weren't that good yet. And secondly, the cause of the tumor was not simultaneously removed from the person. That's the big difference. And that's wrong. I'm glad to be allowed to say on television, simply to shoot against biological medicine. That is really wrong. This is a component that one should always include. I am not against conventional tumor therapy. On the contrary, I tell my patients they should do it, but only if they also partake in our therapies that keep the body healthy. And this is now a classic case. She joined in from day one, changed her diet, informed herself, detoxified, and built up the immune system. I didn't heal. I only said, this is how it should be done. But she actually did it. And that is so important.
I must also say, with Dr. Rao, you can really tell that he gives the patients everything they need to navigate this world on their own. And that you don't relinquish responsibility with the insurance card, but that you take responsibility for yourself. And it was really the case with Dr. Rao that he didn't look at the folder I brought asking what diagnosis she had and what had already been done. But he saw me as a person with these external influences. Where does she come from? What kind of life does she have? How does she currently live? What possible heavy metal burdens might exist? And for example, through Dr. Rao looking into my life, it turned out that I had a heavy metal burden from very, very old pipes that were laid on our farm, or that are simply too old. Who knows that? Who makes you aware of that? And so the awareness is sharpened to deal with the world in a completely different way, or with the external influences. And that is what I also like about Dr. Rao's approach to medicine. You don't just go into his clinic and he says, now we're doing the infusion, now we're doing this and that. Instead, he looks into life with you and releases you with a good feeling because you know exactly, okay, I now have this and that homework to do. We just need to stick with it and see what we can do to remove these disruption fields. Because that's the only way to get healthy or maintain health. And that's the really, really big difference between biological medicine and conventional medicine. I believe the diagnoses are not that important. First and foremost, it's important how the patient is doing. What can we do? Why does he have the illness? And what can we do to restore health on all levels? And that's a big difference.
Absolutely. So what you said resonates with me because I think each person is ultimately the specialist of themselves and can truly find a way together with the doctor or therapist if they bring in their own knowledge that only they have and also take on the responsibility. And I think you've illustrated that very, very well. And what I would, of course, very much like to know, what was the first thing you did? Was it a diet change, or how did you then eat?
Yes, well, I have to say, or it is maybe important for the viewers too, I am a completely normal woman, a girl from the countryside. My parents have a large farm at home. For example, my mom is a master homemaker. She can cook homemade meals. And we already thought that we were eating healthily because Mom baked bread herself and actually did almost everything herself. But Dr. Rao opened a new world to us. He told us what dairy products do in the body. So my father, who is a farmer, sat in with Dr. Rao, and even for him, completely new doors opened. And that's how it started, that Mom and I spent hours the very next day in the organic store and informed ourselves, what does vegan nutrition actually mean and without sugar? That was indeed the main component. And that was already a very big change. But it's definitely doable, especially today, because 13 years ago it was completely different. Today we are much further along. And I want to say that this was one of the main building blocks at all, the dietary change. That was the very first, and then the detoxification was effective.
What did the detoxification look like? Was it with infusions and tablets or with medication?
You can look at a toxicological book, and then you see, the doctors just don't look at it. Then you see, lead can cause skin cancer. It's a carcinogen. With every patient who comes to us, we do toxicological analyses. And that's how we found it. Where does it come from? No idea. Where did the insane lead levels in her come from? Those were old lead pipes in the agricultural operation. That's what happened. And today, it's not like that anymore. But we investigate that really one-to-one. And try, like a mosaic, to find as many pieces as possible.
Like a detective, I would say.
And remove these pieces. Then simply, and that's how we reach the goal. We never find them all. But the body, when you rebuild its own regulatory system, then it detoxifies the rest better. And the immune system also gets back on track by itself. That's actually the whole trick. It's about the body, bios. And it's logical. That's why we're called biological medicine. And that's just how we do it. And I just regret, I'm not a polarizing person, but I regret that people who have cancer do not treat all these backgrounds as well.
So indeed, we've discussed this in another show before. Because I'm always really irritated. Because people after a chemo are completely down, that they don't look at how to detoxify, how to build up the immune system. That's actually logical, isn't it? But I now know several people from my surroundings, and it's not talked about. You get a bit, well, if you can't tolerate anything yet, then you just eat a bit of rolls and white bread and such, just what you can tolerate. But what that means for the system, because it's also another poisoning with chemotherapy, you just have to say that, right? And I find it very, very, very important that this is just emphasized again, because I believe anyone who has the information can advocate for themselves and can also seek help in a place or seek help for themselves or already make some changes for themselves. And what does your life look like today?
Well, I already said at the beginning that with the opening or with the entry into the clinic of Dr. Rao, my whole life changed. And it really was like that. I even worked in conventional medicine myself and could no longer stand behind it. Really couldn't stand behind it anymore because my consciousness had changed so much that I now trained as a holistic health and nutrition consultant in Switzerland. And my life is such that I cook healthy every day, that I was able to give birth to a daughter. A very healthy daughter, and that I am married. I am also a funeral orator. And of course I still use biological medicine, which has accompanied me my whole life. And I will probably continue to do so until the end of my life, cooking healthy, wanting to nourish myself healthily. And that mindfulness for oneself simply comes first. And that you definitely fare more cost-effectively if you trust in biological medicine rather than thinking the other way with conventional medicine might be a simpler path.
I find that remarkable. Once again, it shows that even very, very difficult stories, if you master them, can ultimately be a valuable treasure. And then in turn, the importance of passing on this knowledge from one's own experience. And I want to ask you, because I always find it so difficult when you receive such a diagnosis, and they say it is incurable, or it is such and such. That affects you greatly. How are you able to let go of that and also find the courage to trust in the body's strength, in its own regenerative and healing power? Was that difficult?
Well, first and foremost, in our region in the Allgäu, we say naddert in the south. I couldn't understand why, in the middle of life, it throws me back like this. The good thing was that I landed immediately with the doctor and in the clinic. The good thing about that was that just 3 months later, I was tumor-free for the first time. And I have to say, I've never felt so good before. Really, I've never felt as good as during this therapy. Well, I could jog 10 kilometers, even though I had never jogged before. And that gives you a lot of courage very, very quickly. And at the doctors, even in the clinic, there was always such a good atmosphere. For me, it was always like spending a day at a wellness spa. You'd get the infusions, and the doctor always had a nice remark to share. And it was simply a good atmosphere, and that contributed greatly to the healing. And because, of course, my whole family pulled together with me, it was actually clear that it was exactly the right thing. And from that perspective, there wasn't really that much, I believe. There weren't that many traumas that developed. Because that's also the difference. When you're sitting in a hospital, in an infusion room, where 20 others are sitting with chemotherapy, where everyone is trying to figure out how to get through the day. And in his clinic, it's just like this. You sit in a comfortable armchair that's even more comfortable than your own sofa at home. The hand is warmed beforehand so that the infusion needle doesn't hurt. And that's simply wellness for the body. And from that point of view, I believe that not much negative has really stuck with me.
Nice. You are also a very strong, vibrant personality. Wonderful.
I have a short one to add. We don't just do detoxification and a bit of immune boosting and so on, but during the time when the person has cancer, we conduct an intensive treatment against the cancer. But on a completely different level. Cancer has a different metabolism than healthy tissue. And there are 4 points where systematically we have 4 different therapeutic approaches. So the heat therapy, the ozone therapy, and so on goes so far, which also acts against the cancer. And this way we gain a lot of time. And at the same time, we detoxify, build up the immune system. There really are 2 tracks.
So a wonderful concept, and also what you so impressively described, such a huge difference in what atmosphere and in what manner one is listened to, received, and treated. And also I believe this should also be a call for our healthcare system to really listen again. Because I also find that so important. And you told it very impressively. And yes, it touches me deeply. And I thank you very much, Marie-Louise, for this story. And yes, a very personal story. And for your strength and your radiance. It's nice to see you like this. And I am quite sure that in your new role, you can pass on a lot of strength and energy to many people. And hope. Thank you very much.
I am grateful to have been here, and that maybe I can make a good contribution when the viewers, the listeners, have now heard and seen my story, that they know there is another door. And you can open them with a clear conscience. And you can enter them with great confidence. Because it can only get better.
Well said. Dear Thomas, thank you very much as well.
Thanks a lot.
For your wonderful work.
That was so self-explanatory. I have nothing more to say about that.
Yes, neither do I. Many thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, thank you very much as well. I think there's nothing more to add to that. And I hope you could take a lot from it for yourself. A lot of hope, a lot of joy, a lot of confidence, and new paths. Stay healthy. I hope for another time, and goodbye.